example, putting you down, those kind of
all
things.
those things that will eventually lead to something that is much more dangerous than what they're doing now.
Yes.
And so there's a pattern that starts at a very, very early period. Is that what we're saying, Reverend?
Yes.
Yeah. Go, I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, I think it does, because I know in a lot of situations, and I can speak to my situation as well, that, it's what we see in the home a lot of times, that we do ourselves, and it seems like, in some situations, it seems like that's the natural normal thing. If I think a child that's growing up in a home where domestic violence is there, then it seems to be natural. I mean, because if this is what you're seeing and you're not seeing, all the healthy stuff, then you felt like what you're looking at and what you're experiencing, that's the norm, that's where it is. So you grow up and you feel like, you duplicate that thing. But I think the whole process with the domestic violence, and looking back, it was just a matter of wanting to control, to be in control, I run this, and you're going to do what I say, and it's going to be my way, and then, and what I've learned, I've learned over the years, man, Dr. Haney, I learned the art of crying. And that's what a lot of people need to be taught how to cry. A lot of boys need to be taught how to cry. A lot of men need to be taught how to cry. They'll stay out of jail if they just went, because what happens is we get our feelings hurt. And then we want to share that hurt and that pain. And the way we know how to share that hurt and that pain is physically. Because, we think that our manhood is all physical anyway, and more physical. So we want to share that hurt and that pain. So we strike out like that. But if you just go somewhere and use that God-given thing called crying, and just cry like you're supposed to. Get on out of the way, sit down somewhere, ball up in a little old ball, and just cry.
Just go on and have a good cry.
I understand. And you can get past that stuff, and you won't have to act out like that. And of course, like I say, you avoid going to jail as a result. But we just want to share that pain, and that's what happens. If you want to be in control, and if you hurt my feeling, you gonna feel what I'm feeling, instead of recognizing this is my pain, this is my feeling, this is my hurt, and I got to deal with my own hurt, and I got to deal with my own pain. And if crying is the mechanism that I need to use to deal with, then that's what I need to do. Because forget about the big boys don't cry stuff. Men that don't cry, something wrong.
Okay, Ms. Jelson, close us out over the last minute and a half that we have in terms of your perception in terms of these young children and domestic violence.
Well, again, it's an epidemic. We need to educate our children. We need to talk to them. We need to tell them the danger signs, what to look for. And through that education to look at it, it's not that they love you. They're just this person is just trying to be in control. It's my way or no way, or it's my way or the highway, that kind of thing.
And so in a real sense, domestic violence starts at an early age, and if we can sort of nip it in the bud, at least make young children much more sensitive and much more knowledgeable in terms of that there's a possibility that we might be able to stop it from occurring later on in life.
And also, Dr. Haney, to get them to show them what a healthy relationship really looks like. They don't know what that is. So we have an obligation to educate them in that area as well.
Yeah, I think that's what the pastor said, is that if you don't know that relationship, if you don't know what a healthy relationship is, you think that what you're doing and the noise that you make, the cursing that you do, the hurt that you inflict is something that is common, you see. And I think that when you live within an area, a community, then that's a part of that. And let me thank the two of you, because later on we're going to have two more individuals to talk about this. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Mr. John, appreciate you. Yeah, you're getting an excellent job.
You're doing great work.
You're doing great work, lady.
And see, back in last year, I was telling Pastor Walker, they had an ACEs summit. A lot of people don't even know about ACEs, but I can tell you about that later.
That sounds good. Brother Johnson, you want to sit here? Ms. Furr, Tracy Furr, okay. And we're still talking about domestic violence and adolescents, and so I think you when we start saying domestic violence and adolescents, and we're going to Tracy FurR,
Yes, sir.
you see, and then we want to start off at about the first 2 minutes of giving you your background, you know, who you are. You saw the way we did.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Johnson, mic check, please.
And then after the, yeah.
Sir,
Say your name and count to 10 for mic check.
Robert R. Johnson, Jr., 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
Just keep going. They got to turn you up.
11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23.
Okay. Ms. FurR?
Tracy FurR, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27.
That's good.
Okay, that last 27. That's
Okay, all right, yes.
Okay, so what we want to do, Brother Johnson, is to buy in to the conversation that we had with Ms. Johnson and Pastor Walker. You see, and this time what we'll do is to, so we've got 10 minutes for this segment. I'll take about a minute to introduce it, and then we want you to take about a minute or 2 minutes to talk about Robert Johnson, just about who you are. And then Ms. FurR, we want you to do the same thing.
Yes, sir.
About a couple of minutes. And
Okay.
then it'll come back to me. After that, then I will come back to you, and then we want you to, start talking, get into the conversation in terms
Right.
of what we're doing and whatever. And then we'll sort of trade it back, but we'll have 10 minutes. So 10 minutes is a long time.
It
Especially
is.
if I could go a long time. But when you have to talk, it sounds. Don't swing it, keep your chair still. All right. Thank you and welcome. Okay. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We've been joined by Mr. Robert Johnson and Ms. Tracy FurR, who will also give us some information in reference to domestic violence and adolescents. But before we get into that, Mr. Johnson, let's see if we can have you to give us a couple of minutes of information about your background, your education, and some of your experiences. And Ms. FurR will do the same thing, and then we'll get into further aspects of domestic violence and adolescence.
Yes, sir, Dr. Haney. I grew up in Mobile, Alabama, graduated from Central High School there in 1964. At that time, I enlisted in the Army and served 2 years while doing 1 year in Vietnam. After my 2 years with the military, I went back to Mobile, spent a few months with my family, and then moved to Nashville, Tennessee. At that time, I went to the, at that time it was Nashville Business College. I spent about 18 months studying there, and after that time, just began to get various jobs in the community, better jobs because I had gone to school. And around 1988, well, in 1985, I met my wife, Joyce Johnson. I met her, and at the same time, I had been praying that that God would give me an opportunity to work with younger people. And so my wife was working at Cumberland Hall, which was, I changed that name to HAC later, but it was a psychiatric hospital for teens and adults. I applied over there. She was working part-time. I applied there for a job, and I couldn't believe that they gave me the opportunity to serve as a counselor for the next 10 years. During that 10-year period, after about 5 years of working there, the criteria started being higher. They wanted college degrees, at least a BS, to in a social field to work as counselors. And so it was a blessing for me because I had already spent more than 5 years of steady working on the job for 10 years. And that's exciting field working with kids. A lot of the kids that I worked with was sexually abused, physically abused, and sometimes all other types of abuses. And it's good to see those kids. You like to think that when they get grown, that you can see some gratification, but that's not a what you would call instant gratification job. You have to be patient. Sometimes it takes years to
see what you're looking for. Very good.
Yes,
okay, Ms. Furr, let's talk about your situation that brings you to us this morning.
Absolutely. Dr. Haney, my name is Tracy Furr. I was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama. Graduated from Ramsey High School in 1988. After graduating from high school, I attended Jacksonville State University, majored in communications. I had my oldest daughter, who is now 25, and then got married and relocated here to Nashville, Tennessee, where I pursued my bachelor's degree, then changing my major to information technology. So I came into information technology because I could get a good job at that time in the early 90s, which was the wave of technology. Then I worked for Allstate Insurance Company for several years, and I was fortunate to participate in their tuition reimbursement program, at which time I pursued a degree in education. I graduated with my bachelor's in business education from Tennessee State University. The following August, which was 1998, then I went into education. And for that, from 1998 until 2014, I taught in metro schools for 14 years. In 2007, I earned my master's from Tennessee State, and now I'm working with Ms. Johnson as her administrator. So I'm also a licensed preacher. So part of what we're doing with YCC is really coming together to make sure that we're handling the business of YCC and also trying to effectively make change in our adolescents that are dealing with domestic violence.
Mr. Johnson, I would imagine that as a counselor, you probably had many opportunities to deal with this issue of domestic violence in adolescents. What are some of the things that you would tell our audience this morning about?
Well, back in during that time frame, we concentrated more on the anger management and the abuses, and we didn't have a lot at that particular time. Domestic violence wasn't looked at as that important.
As a problem, as a real problem.
Other than the family members being abusive themselves. But now, the way it's changed to me is that the domestic world now wants to look at the whole family because the whole family is involved. And one thing that I didn't say was that I just retired here a few years ago from the state of Tennessee, working as a correctional corporal. And I worked at DeBerry Special Needs, which is the mental health facility for the state of Tennessee. And so we had a lot of counseling over there. The social workers did with the inmates on abuses. And I think that helped, but I guess what I want to say is that I got a chance to see the young adults and you know, because sometimes we had people from the age 20 on up. And so to having people 20 years old and up means that there were some family issues. In most cases, there were family issues.
Very good. Ms. Furr, in terms of your profession in reference to this, what are some of the words that you can leave with our audience this morning in terms of what they ought to know or what they ought to do in reference to adolescent domestic violence?
Absolutely. Dr. Haney, we know that the research bears out, as stated earlier in your program, that this behavior begins very young. There is a study called ACEs that is being performed nationally, and this is talking about adverse childhood experiences and how that plays even into physical behaviors, diseases and things that children are dealing with that come out of abusive situations. So we need to know and make your audience know that this is something we need to get involved in. We no longer need to sit back and just let this thing be, because until we are actively involved, we can't make that change. And as an educator teaching in middle school and in high school, I saw this played out every day. So that's part of my passion, coming from education, seeing teenagers and preteens who were experiencing this. And now social media has somewhat glamorized this behavior. And the churches are failing. No longer are the days of community centers where children have outlets to go to. That's far and very rare, where children are even involved in athletic programs and things to keep them focused. So now they're consumed with the internet and consumed with their phones, and now all of this reality television has just taken off in ways we can't even imagine. So we have an obligation, as Ms. Johnson stated earlier, to get involved and get seriously involved in helping our children become better young women and better young men.
As a matter of fact, I think we had an incident not in this city not long ago in reference to a large number of young children being involved in that.
Absolutely.
And so that's the kind of domestic violence, that's the kind of violence that you find among young children now, for the world to see in a real sense. And so let me thank the two of you, as well as Pastor Walker and Ms. Johnson, for coming by and giving us that excellent information today, because I think that all of us are aware of what children are doing, but at the same time, there's no systematic attempt to try to make them do something different. And I think that, as you indicated, they no longer have the community centers and et cetera. And so I want to thank the two of you for coming by and joining those two for giving us this excellent information. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.
Teatro de La Habana, Alicia Alonso, el presidente de los Estados Unidos de América, Barack Obama. Now, entering the Grand Theater of Havana, the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama.
During our visit to Cuba, in which I covered the historic, located 2 blocks away from the Media Hotel, so the building was renamed the Grand Theater.
Experience.
That's it.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
got
what
it.
we want to talk about. And after that, then we'll have.
You can get a mic check, ma'am.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
That's good.
Okay.
That's my granddaughter. She did the first show with us today on Malcolm X and the
Oh,
Black
cool.
Liberation Movement. She's in the 7th grade. To Cuba with Obama.
Yes, sir.
Miss Shayla Paz.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
You're funny.
Huh?
You're funny.
Well, I hope the audience thinks so. Good to us.
Yeah, Kenny, I said to Kenny like 3 times, okay, I gotta go do the interview with Dr. Haney. And then before I left, he said, where did you have to? I said, to the interview with Dr. Haney. And I said, oh yeah, that's right. I said, so forgetful.
It runs quite fast as soon as we get started. So this is a 4 for 5 today. Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is Obama in Cuba. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about Obama's trip to Cuba, Ms. Shayla Paz. Ms. Paz has not been with us before. This is her first time being with us, and she will give us some information in reference to her background, her education, and some of the experiences that she had that eventually led her to us this morning. Now, Ms. Paz, let's talk about your background, your experiences, and some of the things that were important in terms of your life that eventually led you to us this morning.
Oh, hi, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to finally get to be on your show. Yeah, I grew up in Cuba. I left Cuba when I was 28 years old. And my background is musical education. I taught kindergarten for about 3 years. And then I realized that teaching wasn't what I really wanted to do. The music was my passion. So I worked as a musician for about 7 or 8 years until I met my husband, and then came to the U.S. So that's the root of who I am as a how you say, profession.
Well, now, how did you become involved with President Obama's Cuba trip? I mean, what do you know about that? Why don't you tell us as much as you know about that trip?
Well, that's a long story because I started working as a journalist about 9 years ago, And I immediately signed up to be in the White House press list, so I would receive constant updates of the White House, of whatever was happening, so I can have other stories to tell besides stories about entertainment. And I got the opportunity to cover his visit twice in Nashville when he came to Nashville, and I get invitations all the time for all the different events that the White House hosts. I just didn't feel like I should go because, you know, we had to travel to DC or whatever he is. But this time, I received an email with the invitation to go to Cuba, and I was like, oh my God. And I didn't know what to do, so I emailed a friend of mine, and she said, you gotta do it, you gotta do it, you gotta do it. So she helped me put it all together, and her husband used to be a journalist for CNN, and he's semi-retired, and I asked him, can you go with me? So he went, and the trip was amazing, unforgettable, emotional, extraordinary. I need more words to explain how it felt, because as Cuban, to be able to go to my country with President Obama, it was like out of the world, you know, out of the ordinary. And for my family, I don't even know how they felt, because my mom was just looking at me and not saying anything.
Now, was this your first time back to Cuba since when?
Since 2 years ago. I went 2 years ago, yeah.
How many times have you been back to Cuba since you first left?
Oh my God.
So it's a regular kind of thing with you?
Maybe 4 or 5 times, yeah. Because, you know, my family is still there. My mom, my brothers, my sister, my whole family.
Now, in terms of this invitation that you received, now, how did that work out? I mean, what was the... Give us some information in reference to that.
Well, the thing is that all the media that are on the White House list are invited to come, but you're responsible financially for the trip. They do everything, but at the end of the day, you have to pay for the expenses of the trip. That's how it works.
Now, how did Cuba look to you this time around?
It looked as the same, you know. They just fixed the roads where they knew that President Obama was going to travel through, or they painted the buildings, and the baseball game where it was hosted, the stadium was painted like within a week. And those things are just facade, you know. It's not what the real thing is going on in Cuba. It's more than that.
And so in a real sense, this gave you an opportunity to see your family.
Yes.
And what we want to do during the second segment is to show some images, and I want you to narrate some of the images that you will see and tell us about that, because this is really a wonderful trip for you, was it not? Yes. To go back and to find that not only are you with the president, but your family is still there.
Yes, it was amazing.
Very good. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take our first commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll have the images, and we'll have about 8 minutes for those images, and I want you to narrate for us what we're seeing on the screen, and then after that 8-minute narration, then we'll have our final break, and then we'll come back for 10 minutes and to talk about some of your impressions and some of the things that you saw that you think that our audience ought to know about. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. And so this is an 8-minute segment.
Okay.
And what we want to do is to put the images up and to have you to and to have you to narrate those images. And so we'll do that for 8 minutes, and then we'll come back. We'll take another break, and we'll come back and we'll give you 10 minutes to talk about the trip to Cuba and some of the things that you felt about it and the emotions that you had in reference to. Did you go to the baseball game as well?
Yes.
You went to the
I put a clip in there.
Yeah. Very well. Good. That'll give you an opportunity to talk about, you know, some of the things that this is a first-hand view in terms of President Obama's trip to Cuba. And we think that.
I should have brought the credentials. I forgot.
The what now?
The credentials.
You got the credentials that you used.
I forgot to bring it.
That'll be fine though.
Yeah.
But I think this will testify that you were there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and so this will be our 8-minute segment. Now, we're going to do the images now, is that right?
What?
The images.
Yeah, they got it in there. I'm going to be going there as well.
Oh, okay, very good.
Less than a minute out. That works.
All right.
Oh, got an extra hand. I don't have to do that.
Is it warm outside? It's still warm outside?
It's
or
really
rain?
beautiful.
It's not
No,
raining.
it's not raining. It's beautiful. Perfect.
No, we've got 8 minutes on this. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Ms. Shayla Paz, and she's given us some information in reference to the trip that President Obama took to Cuba and her reaction to that trip since she participated in it in some fashion. And of course, Ms. Paz, we're going in some fashion, you know, to make, because you were involved in quite a number of things, and taking pictures and et cetera. And as a journalist and as a person who in a real sense had an opportunity to go back to Cuba to see your family. And, and I would imagine that that was quite an experience for you to be back into Cuba with the President of the United States.
Yes, it was. It was, you know, because it took a while for us to get to the hotel. First off, we were 45 minutes flying around because the Cuban tower in Havana wouldn't answer the plane to give permission to land. So the pilot finally had to tell us, you know, we have 2 hours of fuel, so we'll get you informed. So this is the moment when the President Obama arrived. So I was there at the airport filming his arrival. Unfortunately, it was raining, so the ceremony was cut short. So he just got down and shook hands with some people, and then they went off. And by the time I got to the hotel, my mom was already waiting for me, so I got to say hello. We talked for about 4 hours, and I knew that I didn't have time. I wouldn't have time to see her again. So we just took advantage of that little time, and we hugged, and I had to film myself doing a little piece about their journey getting there. And my mom was filming me doing my piece, and I was like, trying to hold it together. So, and then I just saw her just looking at the video over and over. And to me, that was quite emotional because I'm the only one in my family that have accomplished something that big. And for her to see me going back with the American president, it was an amazing...
Coming or going with the American president.
Yes, yes. So this is the little thing that I put together for the trip. And this is the street where we were standing at the baseball game, and you know, we went to see some Cuban musicians. You know, the Capitol building, funny, is under repairs. That's the same time as the American Capitol is in repair. I thought that was kind of interesting. This is the hotel where we stayed. It's called Iberostar Parque Central. And this is about the moment where Obama walked on the stage to give the speech to the Cuban people. This is where we stayed. We couldn't afford to stay at the hotel because it was $600 a night.
$600.
And I said, you know what? I can't afford to stay there, so I just gonna call my brother. My brother found me this apartment 2 blocks from the hotel, and we stayed there. This is the private plane that took us there. And the day of the speech, they blocked all the roads. So there was no access for the Cuban people to get in there. This is the place where he gave the speech, which is the Gran Teatro de La Habana, named after Alicia Alonso, the prima ballerina of Cuba. Most of the people that were in there were governmental people, doctors, and people of, you know, some...
influence.
Yeah, influence. This theater is just gorgeous. This is my first time in it. And I was like over the moon being in that theater. I mean, the details are just amazing. So I was like, I gotta write a piece about this. So this is what I filmed. I took some pictures, and this is from the view from the top of the hotel, Ibero Star Hotel. You can see the theater right across the street. It's just gorgeous, and I am glad that he got the opportunity to talk to the Cuban people, because he talked from the heart, you know, and say things in Spanish and not just plain Spanish, Cuban Spanish, which is a little different, you know, like KWalker, that is very ghetto, you know, very street-like.
And so in a real sense, you had not only an opportunity to go with the president, but to see some of the things that, well, what do you think about in terms of, I think you mentioned the fact that they painted some of the buildings before his arrival, and they resurfaced the streets and et cetera. But overall, what do you think about Cuba in terms of what you saw at that time?
See, the buildings, this is one of the side street, and I'm doing a story about the people, how calm they are, but they are very excited that the president was going to be there, and this is not being fixed at all. This is one of those streets that are like really near the main street where Obama was going to drive through with the motorcade. But you know, there is a long ways to go for the Cuban government and for the country itself to being rebuilt, and it's going to take a lot of money. And
how did the people feel? I mean, how do you see the people in terms of their feelings and their emotions in terms of the president's trip there?
The moment that I saw that you could feel, I still get goosebumps. The emotion was when we were at the baseball game. Because when Obama walked through that tunnel, all you feel was the trembling of the whole thing. It was full of Cuban people, and they were there waiting from 10 a.m. in the morning until he got there about almost 2 p.m. And that's when you felt the energy, and they were chanting and saying his name and moving the flag, and it was very, very exciting moment for the Cuban people to see that. And there was like, when I got out, there were people hanging over the top to see him leaving and to arrive. Yeah.
And so that was quite an experience with you and your family.
Yes.
Where was your mother at that time? Were the two of you together at all times? Or what?
No. I wasn't. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to see her again, so I just saw her the night we got there on the 19th, the night before. All the press got there the night before he arrived. So I got to the hotel about 8 p.m. and I got to hang out with my mom for 4 hours. That's it.
And so this was about your 5th time to Cuba since you first left Cuba as a child.
Yeah, about 5 times, yeah. Yeah.
And I would imagine that this was one that you will probably remember more than any trip that you've ever taken there. And so what you're doing now in terms of the images that we see, these are the images that you're using for your own television show. Is that not?
Yeah, this is what I filmed. All the coverage was for the Latino community, which my shows is for, you know, Entertainment Circle. And on my website, I created a special place, pages for the videos from Cuba. So anybody can go in there and see all my videos and
What's
my video
the site
blog.
number for that?
It's Entertainment Circle Network. It's circletv.com.
Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to take this second commercial break, and then we'll come back with 10 minutes. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Whatever, political, social, or whatever, you know, some of the old automobiles. I mean, I would imagine, what your impression about that, and the general status that you saw in Cuba? I mean, you know, we've got 10 minutes for that. And so anything that you'd like to talk about, feel free to do so, okay? And then we'll be able to cut this out, and then we'll have This will be an excellent show. I think that this is an excellent show, what you're doing.
Thank you
here.
so much.
Well, I think it's information, you know, to say that we had a chance to talk to one of the persons that went to Cuba with President Obama, you know, and then we've got it on tape. And that's, I think
well, at least on that first clip that he put up, I have my credentials on, so you can see it.
You can see it on there.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, every time. We had a Secret Service guy assigned to us. For the White House press.
So well, why don't you, you know, this is 10 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't have any information about it at all.
Okay.
And so what you do is to just inform me
for
the next 10 minutes of this last segment on what went on while you were in Cuba. Did you have a chance to go out to dinner, or did you go to a restaurant, or did you go to all confined?
Only one time I went to that bar where the musicians were playing, and we had a daiquiri. There
was no free movement anywhere you wanted to go.
Well, it was, but I just didn't have time. The time was really tight. So
okay, to Cuba with Obama, is that the name of this? Okay, so good. We're getting ready for this final segment. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We talked to Ms. Shayla Paz, and she's given us some information about President Obama's trip to Cuba. And of course, Ms. Paz, let's see if we can close out this last segment by giving you an opportunity to talk about some of your activities and some of your impressions in terms of going to Cuba, to talk about the environment, to talk about some of the people, some of the things that you saw. As a matter of fact, why don't you say something about the automobiles that you saw while you were in Cuba?
Well, you know, the American cars are still running in Cuba, and the interesting thing was that I was taking pictures all the time of all the cars that I saw, and then that night, the second night we were there, my producer say, okay, I'm gonna go to Floridita and have a daiquiri. And I said, no, wait a minute, I'm going too. I want to have a daiquiri too. And we went, the musicians were playing, and then when we were walking along the street, there was just one car that stopped, and I said, do you mind if you can open the hood and let me see what kind of motor you have in there? He had a 1998 Nissan motor in it. And I was, and I was like, wow, and you still have that thing running? And say, yeah, I gotta keep it running. So he had it as a taxi. So everywhere you went, you see the cars all over the street.
Old model cars,
old models,
American cars for the most
Chevy,
part.
1950, 1960, 79, I mean, all of them.
And it carried you back. What were your impressions? I mean, how did you feel being involved in that kind of environment?
Oh my God, I really have no words to describe how is the feeling. It was just a lot of excitement, you know, and to be there in such a historic moment. For me, as Cuban and Cuban American, it was quite extraordinary. And the most important thing was, I said I had my own James Bond because we had a Secret Service person assigned to us as a member of the press for the White House. So everywhere we went, he will go with us, and they will give us a special credential for every event. We were divided in two groups because the time between one event and the other one were so small that we all couldn't go at the same time to all the events. So I got the opportunity to go to 4 of them, which was the airport, the speech to the Cuban people, the joint statement by the 2 presidents, and the baseball game, which everybody was allowed to go because it was the last event of the day or his trip. And it was quite something to see him that close to me because I seen him before close, but not that close. And he was genuinely happy to be there and to be there with his family. And I wish I would have had the time to go to one of the events with Michelle Obama, especially one that she spoke to the high school girls. But you know, you just have to do what they tell you that you have to do, and you just go and do it.
And so looking back over it, you think that this was quite an experience, and it's one of the experiences that you're trying to share with other people by way of your television show. Is that what,
yes,
that's what you're doing?
Yeah, my TV show is called Entertainment Circle, and it's online on my own website called Entertainment Circle Network. And the trip to Cuba, I name it To Cuba with Obama. So they put the hashtag TWO, they will find all my coverage on Twitter, on Facebook, and all social media, and on my website. And I do honestly want to tell people that they have to go and check out Cuba and meet the people and feel the love and feel their energy and see for their own eyes what they are suffering, because politics is politics and people are people. You know, so you have to separate the two. You cannot get the politics in between the prosperity of the Cuban people, because they will never prosper. I mean, the changes in Cuba have to come within Cuba, and the Cuban people, as President Obama said, have to encourage that and promote that and have the first step forward to promote change in the government. But if we put a little step on it, it will help them in the long run.
So you think that what the president did in terms of recognizing Cuba is a very, very important step, and that it ought to be supported, and that the Cuban people were in favor of that? Was that the impression that you
definitely, definitely. I got the chance to talk to a few people on the street, and they were very, very happy of his visit, and they all said that it's the first step in the right direction, and that they were very hopeful. They were really, really happy about that. So we'll see.
And so the president really made an impression, a real impression on the people in Cuba, and even the president. What do you think about? You had an opportunity to go to the meeting that he had with the president of Cuba. What happened at that meeting? I mean, how did that all come about?
That was very interesting, because the Cuban president or the government is not used to doing press conference. So after they gave the statements, I didn't know they were going to allow questions. So I was lifting my hand every couple of seconds to get my chance. But President Obama took 2 questions, and he picked the people that he wanted to be asked from. And then those 2 people got the chance to ask questions to Raul Castro, and he just threw it back in their court. He didn't really answer the questions. He was like, where are the political prisoners? We don't have political prisoners. And they do, but he doesn't want to admit it. And the questions about human rights violation, and he just say, what country in the world fulfill all the human rights? Nobody does. So we feel 45 of them. That's all he said. But that, he sort of admitted that, yeah, we have human rights violation, but he didn't want to say which one.
But overall, you think that it was a very, very positive experience that you had by going to Cuba with the president, and that you think the president made a very, very positive impression on the people of Cuba. Is that what? Yeah,
definitely it was. And I just talked to my mom 2 days ago, and she said things are still not moving, you know, since are kind of like there were, but the parliament is in session right now, so they're waiting to see what happened after the parliament. Fidel Castro came out on television yesterday and spoke and said that he's going to die soon, and that he hoped that the Cuban people and the people that stay in power continue with his vision of the country and his revolutionary thoughts. So I hope not.
but you personally did not have an opportunity to see Mr. Castro, Fidel Castro. Did you see him?
No, nobody got to see him. Raul Castro is the president.
Yeah. But you never saw Fidel.
No, no. I was like impressed that I was that close to Raul Castro, you know, and see him for the first time that close in person, right there in front of me. But, you know, I didn't get the chance to ask a question, so I just have to wait for my next time.
Okay, so we've got about 2 minutes, Ms. Paz, and anything that you might like to say in terms of your trip to Cuba, or in terms of the president, or whatever, this will be your opportunity to do so.
I still have to finish my coverage, and because I haven't had a chance to finish all the editing. And the other thing is that since I have to put the money myself to go for this trip because I'm an independent journalist. I had started a GoFundMe campaign, and we're still trying to raise the rest of the money to pay the White House. I just received the first bill, and it was $4,000 just for the plane. And they're still going to bill me for the ground transportation in Cuba and telecommunications. I assume food and water, but I don't know. So I'm praying that it's not over $2,000. So that's it. It was quite shocking that it will be that expensive, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
You think it was worth it?
It was totally
of the cost
yes,
that you had to pay in reference to doing that, and the images that you have, and some of the experiences that you have was certainly worth it as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, of course. It was a big step on my career as a journalist. Yeah.
I think it's a big step for the president too. To go down
definitely.
And to be able to do some of the things that he's trying to do, and diplomatic recognition of Cuba by the president. And
I am so glad that he got the opportunity to go before he left office. He promised that he was going to try to reestablish relationship with Cuba, and he's doing that. And the next thing that he promised was to close Guantanamo Bay, and I don't know if it's going to happen because of the situation with the prisoners. And now the next thing is to lift the embargo, and I hope they do, because it's not doing good for any of the parties.
Okay, let me thank you, Ms. Paz, for coming by and giving us that excellent information. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you, and good morning. What do you want to call this?
So I was going to mention how I came to communal organizing and then tied to the church.
Okay.
So it's nonviolent direct action. From the 60s, I pulled from like Matthew Walker and those other folks who we learned this from, and then we're continuing to organize in community.
Okay, so what do you want to do? Here's the thing. It's 6 minutes.
Okay.
First minute, background education experience.
Okay.
And the only thing, that'll be 6 minutes.
Okay.
And so you don't, just
Just
do that.
Okay.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a commercial break.
So, give me a mic check, please, so your name and count to 10.
Keith Caldwell, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
And then after that first segment, background education experience, then we'll talk about 8 minutes.
Okay.
Talk about the topic.
Okay.
What do you want to call this?
I want to say organizing out of faith.
Okay.
Or something like that. Yeah.
Let's organizing
from a faith perspective, or how my beliefs impact how I see community, or something to that effect. I'm just
Let's see, faith and community.
Yeah, faith and community.
Faith and community.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Can you do
yeah,
that?
I can do it. Oh, yeah.
Okay, faith
yeah.
and community, which means that that first segment will deal with the topic. I'll introduce it as faith and community.
Okay.
With Keith Caldwell.
That's it.
All right.
Right.
And then I'll have you to give us some information about your background, education.
Okay. Okay.
Do that for 6 minutes.
Okay.
Then we come back and we'll talk about faith and community.
Yes.
The topic of the show today.
Okay.
And so you'll have 8 minutes to start that off. And
Good.
And you know what you want to talk about when you talk about
Yeah.
faith and community.
Yeah.
I don't have any,
Okay.
You know, I know.
Yeah.
But you got your specific information in reference to that.
Yeah.
And then we'll, after 8 minutes, we'll end that segment.
Okay.
And then we'll come back with 10 minutes for a 10-minute segment.
Okay.
We'll continue in faith and community and anything else that you want to talk about.
Okay.
The only thing I want you to do is keep on talking.
Okay.
It's the last of 5 shows that
I
we've
see.
done today.
Good.
So.
Good. This looks different since the last time I was here. That's been several years ago, though.
Several years ago,
Yeah.
Okay. Keith Caldwell.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So you retired from Tennessee State?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
After about 35
Yeah.
years out there. Yeah, I was talking to one of the former, one of the professors out there, Dr. Sanford, E.K. Sanford.
Okay.
I was telling him, he was in with us earlier today, and I was telling him that I've not been back there in a real sense since, because I think that somebody might catch me and hold me.
And want to talk?
Want to catch me and keep me out there.
Yeah, you did some great work out there.
Yeah, I enjoyed being out there too. Yeah, I never had a day of regret while I was out there. Okay, so Mr. Caldwell, this is faith and community.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's
Okay.
the topic of it. And I've been here since 10:30 this morning.
Oh man,
Sit right in this chair. My granddaughter was did the first show with us.
Okay.
Malcolm X and the Black Liberation Movement.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay.
So I want to talk about how Nashville impacted the movement and how it continues to, as an interpreting community.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay.
You're just free to do anything as long as you keep on talking.
Keep on talking.
Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is faith and community, and we're fortunate to have with us to talk about faith and community Mr. Keith Caldwell. And Mr. Caldwell, let me welcome you to the show this morning and to tell you how delighted we are to have you with us this morning to talk about this very, very important topic.
Thank you, Dr. Haney. Good to be here.
And but before we get into that, Mr. Caldwell, let's talk about Keith Caldwell.
Okay.
Let's have you to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of your experiences that eventually led you to where you are now, and to come to us and talk about faith and community.
Okay. I'm a native Nashvilleian. Grew up in North Nashville. Grew up in public housing, John Henry Hill, Preston Taylor, and went to the public school system. I did my undergrad at Tennessee State and American Baptist College. Then I went on to graduate school at Vanderbilt and earned a Master's of Divinity from Vanderbilt University. Part of what brings me to faith and community is I grew up in the Greater St. John Missionary Baptist Church, and my uncle was the pastor then, Reverend Frank Spence, and I used to hear him preach about not just this world, but that there was another world that would happen after we die, but also that we could help bring that world into this world. And the justice and the fairness and the equity that Jesus demonstrated through his life and ministry. So I began with my job. I was working as a labor union, and when we were bringing a labor union into a metro, I was working for Metro, and I saw that when the labor union came in, collective bargaining and the power that we gained through having a voice, a collective voice, went through collective bargaining, a labor union, and kind of saw a glass ceiling because it was still more white men that dominated that. So I went over to community organizing. About 15 years ago, Governor Bredesen had gutted TFurr2. If you remember, TFurr2 was, and we were thinking about, there were people who needed insulin and things like that that couldn't get access. So there was a sit-in that they were going to do at the governor's office downtown. And I was working with the Nashville Peace and Justice Center then, and they decided to do a sit-in. It was called the Nashville 20. And we all went, 20 of us, and did a sit-in. It lasted 77 days. Longest sit-in in U.S. history in a government facility at that time. And so we had it, that plan that, you know, different people would go home and different people would rotate in and out. And I remember when it was time for us to leave the Capitol, the state troopers came in and said, you have to leave. And we decided we weren't. And there was about 25 of them lined across the office. And the receptionist's phone rang, and the governor said, do not touch those people, because he knew it would be a public relations nightmare. We stayed, and when I got ready to leave out of the office, went into the hallway, and there all the news channels, Associated Press, and they were asking, you know, and we say, well, this is a matter of justice. We will stay here as long as we have to, and we are staying here for the most vulnerable of our citizens who don't have access to health care, and there's another way we can find. Now, TFurr2 was lauded as a model for what a state could do for its residents, but the problem with TFurr2 was it was only at a state level, and so people were moving from Mississippi and Alabama, and they, you know, the rolls swelled to the point that it was not, we couldn't keep that up. So that was a precursor to President Obama's Affordable Health Care Act. Now that was, of course, modeled out of Massachusetts, which was a fantastic model. So when I saw that the state-sanctioned officers couldn't touch us, and growing up in public housing and seeing racial profiling and things happen, something triggered in me, and I knew that I would have to do this work for the rest of my life. I went on to get hired by the Nashville Peace and Justice Center, become the director of that, and at some point, Dr. Sekou Franklin and I started Urban Epicenter, and that's a grassroots organizing that center around racial and economic justice issues. So we worked that out.
Very good. And so what we'll do, we're going to take our first commercial break, and then we'll come back and talk about the health situation, because I think that that's one of the most important areas, and especially when you talk about TFurr2. And I would imagine, as a community organizer, you've got quite a bit of information in reference to what is going on with health and the Tennessee government. And so we want to talk about that. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
And I haven't stayed, I'm so disgusted by it, I haven't stayed on top of what it is, because it's a false substitution. He could just sign off on the Affordable Health Care Act, but he doesn't have the political will. We haven't created the political will for him to do so. But as far as the specifics of his plan, I haven't. Well,
you don't have to talk about the specifics of it, but the fact is that you know that there is Obamacare, and that it has been used. I mean, it's served a large number of folks.
Over 30 million people will be added to the rolls.
Well, let's talk about it from that perspective and indicate that Tennessee is not
signed off on
signed
that.
off
Yeah.
into Obamacare, and
Yeah.
they've got another program
Yeah.
that they've tried to
What's
use.
the name of what did he name that?
10 Care.
No, he named it something affordable care something. Something Tennessee. But I yeah.
Yeah.
I only have to name it.
Yeah, you don't have to name it, but the very fact that this is a substitute for what they consider to be Obamacare, and there's been quite a bit of opposition.
Push it back to
and so make some statements in terms of how you feel about health care and some of the needs that we have, not necessarily to criticize the government or whatever.
Oh,
but
I can do it.
You understand what I'm saying? But some of the needs that people have.
Here's the thing, that it doesn't allow the cherry picking that insurance companies